We all know Qatar as a small but incredibly rich country in the Persian Gulf that is hosting the 2022 FIFA World Cup, as the country that got its wealth really fast and in a few decades became one of the wealthiest countries in the world. But what is the Qatari government hiding behind that glass and luxury? After watching this video, you'll know the real cost of the Qatari miracle. In the second half of the 20th century, Qatar began exporting gas and crude oil, which quickly became the main source of the revenue for the country. As the demand for gas and oil grew, so did the Qatar's wealth. The government used this wealth to invest in infrastructure, education and healthcare, which helped to improve the standard of living for its citizens. In addition to its oil and natural gas resources, Qatar has also diversified its economy by investing in a range of industries, including finance, real estate and tourism. Today, Qatar is known for its modern infrastructure, including state-of-the-art roads, airports and buildings. It is also home to a thriving cultural scene with world-class museums, galleries and cultural events. But that's all words. What about the real numbers? Qatar currently has a population of over 3 million people that has really exploded after 2008 or so. At the same time, the country's GDP in 2022 is $216 billion, with the nominal GDP per capita at around $61,000, which, for the comparison, is higher than Saudi Arabia and Bahrain's. Qatar's GDP per capita is actually higher than that one in the US, Canada, Japan and other alpha countries. The country has one of the highest percentages of labor force. 2.2 million workers make a 73% labor force and one of the lowest unemployment rates, 0.3%. In 2020, Qatar exported a total of $47.2 billion, making it the number 49 exporter in the world. The exports of Qatar are petroleum gas, crude petroleum, refined petroleum, ethylene polymers and nitrogenous fertilizers, exporting mostly to Japan, India, China, South Korea and Singapore. The economy is growing and, according to projections, will grow at 2.5% a year. In December, during the 2022 World Countries Awards, Qatar was voted the best country in the world, and the people of Qatar were voted as the nicest in the world. Qatar tourism has won 13 prestigious awards as of the end of 2022. The country received Public Health Accreditation Board Award, the first ever outside the US, and in November 2022, Qatar Airways won 4 new awards. Those awards are only a small fraction of everything that Qatar has won over the years, and the country isn't stopping there. The Qatari government reportedly has invested $300 billion on upgrading the capital city of Doha and building new hotels, stadiums, accommodation and other facilities. But who builds all those hotels or stadiums for the World Cup? Are the Qatari citizens working day and night? No. It is estimated that the total migrant workforce in Qatar is nearing 2 million people, which makes it almost 95% of the country's labor force. In the first quarter of 2017, out of a 2.1 million strong labor force, 2 million were non-nationals and 99% of them were employed. The graph of population clearly shows the boom in the country's population numbers after the World Cup hosting was announced. Thousands of workers arrived to the country to fill freshly opened job positions. For immigrants, the construction sector stood out by far as the main employer. In 2006, 125,000 workers were recorded in that sector, a quarter of all employed foreign nationals. 3 years later, in 2009, recruitment in this activity had more than quadrupled and was peaking at 558,000 workers, or 47% of the total foreign workforce. In 2015, the sector still employed 42.2% of all foreign laborers and had reached another high, a six-fold increase in 9 years. As of 2020, 35% of population is working in construction. According to the latest data from the Qatari government, as of 2020, the majority of foreign workers in Qatar were men, with approximately 83% of the immigrant labor force being male and 12% being female. The largest age group among foreign workers was 25-34, followed by the 35-44 age group. When it comes to nationality, in 2015, workers from India were making 25% of the country's population. Nepalese people 13.5%, Bangladesh citizens 10.8%. Other labor workers have arrived from Philippines, Egypt, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Syria, Sudan and a handful of other countries. That's only the data for 2015, and by 2022 these numbers should be higher. But the demographic wouldn't have been that important if it wasn't for the conditions of people's labor. First, They were forced to pay billions of dollars in recruitment fees just to be recruited for the job. It is estimated that Bangladesh workers have paid upfront up to $2 billion in fees, and Nepali workers have paid around $400 million in fees. It is unclear how much was paid by workers from other countries like India, Philippines, or Egypt. According to Bloomberg, typical fees were $3,000 to $4,000, and the typical monthly salary was around $275. This means a typical worker was supposed to work an entire year basically for free just to pay off that recruitment fee. But high recruitment fees were only the beginning. Workers were cramped in dirty barracks on the outskirts of the city of Doha, unable to leave or find another job due to the way the contracts were written. People were and are working long hours under the blasting Arabian sun without sufficient amounts of water or cooling, constantly threatened for drinking water or taking breaks, forced to work. Due to harsh working conditions, many workers who managed to return home have obtained lifelong health conditions or injuries or even died. There have been multiple protests of laborers over the years, and the government's response was to aggressively suppress all protests and deport some of the protesters. The world's press and accusations from many countries have forced the Qatari government to slightly loosen its grip. The working hours were reduced. The workers became able to leave their job and find another one, and a few other small things. But nothing still has been done to the way the government treated workplace injuries and fatalities. The government has been silent and secretive about the number of fatal injuries and deaths among workers. The majority of deaths were marked as natural causes, heart attack or cardiac failure. Based on the data obtained by The Guardian, 69% of deaths among Indian, Bangladeshi and Nepali workers were marked as natural. Such vague wording allowed Qatar to leave families of deceased immigrants not only without compensation, but also without clear explanation how their husband, father or brother died. The Guardian has calculated that by February 2021, 6,500 people died at the construction site. On average, 12 people died every week during the construction. The total death toll is probably higher because the number includes only the data publicized by India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka and Pakistan. What all that means is that Qatar's immense infrastructure is built by millions of people from poor countries who are unable to return to their homes. Treated poorly and ignored, these people pay the high price so that Qatar could look as it looks. Qatar is a modern slaver, employing the least protected people, exploiting them to the limit, but giving them illness and health conditions in return. Thousands of people have lost their lives while building the Qatari miracle. Thousands of kids have lost their fathers. Thousands of wives have lost their husbands. And thousands of parents have lost their kids. The country's luxurious infrastructure is paid not with gas dollars, but with human lives. We should remember that at all times.